Bogues, just so you know, I had to talk to the FIBA people, and I told them you busted Sabonis' ass when you were 11 years old, so that's how you got in. So I just want to let you know.
I did. Welcome to Rogue Boys Basketball Series. NBL winding down, NBA heating up right before All-Star break. We're just going to see where all that goes. Pro, cold in Dallas. You all right, man?
Man, it's like 16 degrees today. So, yeah, a little cold, to say the least. Then I had a kid's birthday party to go to. That was fucking interesting. And then, yeah, that was about it. But you know what? I usually bust your balls. I can't bust your balls today, Mr. FIBA. I mean, what is it? NBL Hall of Famer, FIBA Hall of Famer. At
least get it right, man.
Shit talker Hall of Famer. Which one is it?
At least get it right. FIBA Hall of Fame. We'll get to that shortly. Thanks, appreciate that.
Congratulations, man.
Bow down.
Yeah.
Bow down.
Yeah. They said it was between you and Ben Pepper, but you sort of had the edge over Ben Pepper
Throwback.
by a little bit. Yeah.
Ben Pepper.
When Pacino got to the Celtics, they drafted him in the second round, the first draft. I was like, who the fuck is Ben Pepper? And then,
he was at the University of Utah too before me. He was
Was he really?
Yeah, he was.
Somebody.
I'm pretty sure.
One of my boys, Dave Severns, was a scout for the Pacers. He went to a Utah game and sent me a picture of your jersey hanging from the rafters, man.
Retired, baby.
Yeah.
Let's see. I'm pretty sure it was. Was it Ben Pepper, Trent, or Melmoth?
Melmoth.
I don't think it was Pepper. I think Pepper was like right. AIS when they drafted him or something.
I think it was Melmoth that went to. I always get those two confused. It was Ben Melmoth that went to.
You guys always make fun of me that I don't know my NBL shit, but right now I'm getting up there a little bit now.
You're getting up there.
The tides are turning.
For the Gold Coast Blaze back in the day.
Yeah. But yeah, Melmoth was it. Yeah, Pepper was a solid big in our league. Traditional 7-footer.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't last over there. All right. Team of the week, who you got?
Oh, it's going to depend on who you had, but I'm going to go with the Indiana Pacers, actually.
No, didn't have
Indiana them. Goes 3. I was going to go Atlanta or Indiana based on who you were going to take, but I was front running the last few weeks, so I'm glad I'm actually taking somebody, sort of somebody different. But Pacers are 3-1. They split with Cleveland. They lost Halliburton I believe they lost Halliburton in either the first or the second game against Cleveland. So he was out for like a game and a half. And then, Miles Turner and Siakam have been killing it the last few games for those guys. Actually, like the last 10. But they've been playing really well. Like right now they're trying to solidify top 4 in the East. I think they're playing really well. Rick's always going to coach. Carlisle will always get them ready offensively and just sort of going at it, but be able to beat Cleveland, split with Cleveland, which is one of the hottest teams in the league, and to be able to do that and then just continue. I mean, they didn't have a strong couple of games after as far as opponents in the last couple, but they were still good, man. I mean, to play 4 games in a week is tough. To go 3-1 and, just sort of playing at the level those guys are playing at, that's a pretty high, they're playing at a pretty high clip. And I think that, the top 3 is solidified, however you want to rank them. It's either going to be Cleveland, Boston, Cleveland, and then New York. I think that Indiana and Milwaukee will be interesting as far as battling out for 4th place. And then you got Orlando trying to get their guys back before the second half push. So it's going to be an interesting 4, 5, 6 sort of the jockeying for position for those guys. But they've been playing great. Like I said, Turner and Siakam have been playing out of this world. Halliburton's had an up and down year this year. He's definitely taken a little bit of a backseat from what he did last year. I mean, deservedly so. He had a great season last year, but I think Siakam and Turner are really bringing it every night. They got a good bench. Mathurin has really stepped in and played well in his role. 16-6-2, and guys like Toppin and they lost Wiseman for the year, but just a bunch of their guys is playing hard as hell. TJ McConnell's fun to watch. So, yeah, Indiana's been playing well, man.
Yeah, 8-2 in their last 10. They're playing real well. Halliburton's, I think it all comes down to his three-point shot, right? What's he at? He's circa 30s or below 30s right now. As we speak.
Last year he was good. He's at 35.5. I think last year he was better than that. I think he was closer to 40, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, at one point he was, I think at one point he was in the high 20s this season, so he's got it back. But he had some horror shooting nights. He takes a lot of bad ones, like super far out and whatnot. But But they're kind of back to where they should have been. I think I had them in my top 4 actually, preseason, if I remember correctly, just because I thought that they're well coached, they will get on a run, they play a high tempo. I haven't played as high a tempo as they did last season, Pro. They've tweaked it a little bit. I think last season they had a couple of those games in the 140s, 150s in regulation. They're still playing a high tempo, but it just does not seem as all in as it was last season.
Yeah, I think they're playing a little bit different. I mean, it's hard to say in the NBA because, like, every week there's a team that's the best offensive team in the history of the NBA based on stats. So it's really hard. I mean, they really had a great year, especially at the end of the year playoffs. They made the trade for Siakam, mid-year, so they had to sort of get used to that and how to just sort of navigate around that for sure. But I thought that they're sort of getting back to their own. I think Halliburton just sort of has to get back to being consistent. He was at, I wouldn't say an MVP level last year, but he was at an all NBA first team level for sure for a lot of the year. And, now he's sort of, like you said, he had a horrific start to the season shooting the ball and now sort of getting back to it. But they've always had guys that scrap, like the McConnells of the world, the Matherins of the world. I think they did a really good job of the development of Obi Toppin. So they played well across the board with those guys. But they've, like I said, Siakam and Turner really stepping up for those guys. Turner's averaging 15 and 7 on the year, but I think in the last 10, he might be close to like 20 points a game. And he's, I thought he'd be the odd man out, when Carlisle got there at some point. I thought they were going to move on from him, but I think they've really embraced him. He's embraced them. He's always been a pro's pro, but yeah, they've been a fun team. And they're getting to be a fun team to watch, especially from last year making the conference finals.
Yeah, no doubt, and they'll be in the mix again in the East. They're that 4, 5, 6, but they could cause a little bit of problems in a playoff series for one of those top 3. Don't know if they'll beat any of those top 3, but they'll definitely cause some problems just with their tempo and pace of play. I had the Houston Rockets, your favorite AAU team, playing really good basketball. Yeah, they're 7-3, well 6 from 7, the last 7 games. So. And they got some tough wins. I mean, they lost to Sacramento, who are playing really well at the moment. I had Atlanta in there possibly as well, as playing really well. But they beat Portland their last game, lost to Sac, but then they beat Memphis back-to-back in 2 games, and then punched Denver in Denver, which is hard to do. So those 3 wins alone are against really, really good opponents, and 2 close games against Memphis back-to-back, punched Denver, had a bit of a hangover effect against Sacramento. And then have beaten Portland, and they've got Cleveland coming up, which I'm looking forward to. I actually won't watch those games. Watch one of the first regular season games. I'll actually watch. They have
Interesting.
They have a home and home with Cleveland at the end of this week. So 22nd and 25th of January they play Cleveland. So I'll be interested to see if they can get one of those ones. But they've been playing good. They're well balanced. They're tough. They play together for the most part. Shingun's been playing really well for him. I mean, he just does so much out there for him. They have one of those teams. They have a unique balance of athleticism, perimeter threats, but they can also have the luxury of throwing it inside to a guy and getting you 20 and 10 on any given night, which you don't see a lot these days. You don't see mass post-ups, but Udoka doesn't have any problem with throwing it down there and really punishing teams for switching and putting smalls on Shingun. So they've been really, really solid, and I mean I think they're probably ahead of where most people thought they'd be at this point. And I mean, I didn't have them second in the West, and they deserve to be there. They're playing really good basketball.
Yeah, they are playing well. I mean, he's had them playing at a pretty high clip, most of the season. I think the development of Amen Thompson, has been really good. Look, Shingun is. I remember that like 2 drafts ago when they got I think Thompson, if I'm not mistaken, Thompson, Jabari Smith, and then Shingun was like the 3rd first rounder they got. I was excited about him more than the other 2. And look, everyone talks about the death of the post guy, the true post player. And then you also on the same breath, you also hear about teams can't compete for a championship because they're not big enough. It's interesting, right? Shingun sort of is an interesting player. He's not really that athletic. He's strong. He's wide. He's sort of like pancake blocks you, when he's in the paint there. He's got really good feet. He doesn't really play away from the basket all that much, but he could really pass. He could really rebound. He's tough. He's skilled as hell. And then you got all these other guys like Jalen Green has really stepped into his own. He was immature to start off his career. I think he's matured his game a little bit, averaging 21 and 4. Dylan Brooks is always that solid player. Van Vliet sort of running the show. Their rotation guys are good. Reed Shepherd I thought would play a little bit more. He's been mostly in the D League. And then you've got Tyrese and Cam Whitmore sort of coming off the bench. Steven Adams, who was relegated to every other game, is now, played, has been playing a bunch of games, back up, probably playing about 11 or 12 minutes a game, has given them a good boost off the bench. But look, they're tough. They've got athleticism. They got youth. They're, the only thing that's not, the only thing that's missing from them is our guy Jock Landale playing a little bit more for them. Hopefully things could turn around by the end of the year. But they're good, man. They're competing. They're beating teams. I don't think anybody really expected them to be second in the Western Conference, and as hot as Memphis is, to be able to beat them twice is pretty remarkable. And look, if they can get in the top 4, have host a playoff series, I think that would be great for them. If they could hold on to second, that would be great. But they got them playing. They're playing well. And look, they've been up and down, for the last few years for sure. I think Udoka's really, given them and just sort of put them on a good path as far as steady accountability, and just sort of that guy that they could look to sort of take them forward. So yeah, they're a good team for sure.
And my week this week is, I had the Spurs in there. They haven't been playing well. They've been kind of inconsistent, but I got the Knicks. They've had a pretty rough couple of weeks, to be honest with you. They had a nice little 3-game losing streak. OKC, Chicago, and Orlando. I mean, you got to beat Chicago surely, but yeah, OKC, Chicago, Orlando. They beat Toronto. They lose to OKC. And then they beat Milwaukee, lose to Detroit, beat Philly, lose to Minnesota. So that just the inconsistency for a top 3 team in the East is they're kind of Boston-y in a way. They did have a nice little win streak before that of, what was that, 10 odd games or 9 odd games they won in a row. But just being a little clunky, Towns has been in and out of the lineup, but it's kind of the dog days of the season for them. I think we had this conversation about Boston a week or two ago, where it seems like it's the dog days. They've dropped some games they shouldn't have, but they just want to be careful. Like they're still, Indiana's surging, and they're 3 games above Indiana in 5. Milwaukee's 2.5 behind them. Look, I don't think they're threatened to fall out of the 3, but you never know. And I think that 4-5 historically has always been a dangerous first round matchup for most teams. So, but Spurs were the other one that have been consistent. But I'll go with the Knicks just because they're a more talented team and should be a little bit more consistent over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, Bogues, I think we've all been there, with you're heading there and after the holidays and you're there in January, and regardless if you're playing well, you're not playing well, you're looking at that, mid-February calendar, and, you get those tickets to Mexico or LA or wherever you're going to go, or some island or something like that for a few days, looking forward to that. And sometimes you're a little bit foggy brained as far as just trying to get through the first half of the season. Now for Brunson, he's obviously going to be working for the first few days of that vacation, but for the most of those guys, they're probably up and down with that, and sort of, sometimes you lose a little bit of the edge in January, getting into the All-Star break. But like you said, like with the travel, with the teams, with the games, sometimes you just sort of lose sight of what's going on. But I'm not all that worried. Sometimes you go through a little bit of a clunky part of the season, and I think that's sort of where they're at. I think they're still trying to, even though they're playing at a decent clip, even though they were at least before this last week or so, to have Towns playing at that level, I don't know if anyone really expected it. I don't know if anyone would admit to it, but averaging 26 and 14, and doing what he's doing offensively for them, and then everyone else has to adjust a little bit. Bridges got to adjust a bit. Anunoby, what is it? Anunoby? OG?
Anobi.
Yeah. Anobi, my fault. So Anobi,
but it's spelled Anunoby,
Josh Hart.
Right? It's spelled Anunoby.
Ouby is the way it's spelled. So it's like
I think it's spelled Anunoby.
Yeah,
it sounds like Anunoby. Yeah. I think it's Anobi.
Yeah, I graduated with a 2.01 grade point average, brother. So I'm not the best at spelling. But with those guys, look, they, and missing Mitchell Robinson, missing a couple other pieces off of the Towns trade. I think they're still trying to trying to figure out consistency, especially in that second half of that, that unit, that second unit. So I think they'll be okay. I think Tibbs will get them going, and just keep them going. But yeah, I think we're heading into the dog days for the next couple of weeks, heading into All-Star break and things. But I think they'll be fine.
Yeah, I agree. Just the last couple of weeks not great, but it was kind of hard to find a legit one. Who you got?
I had the Chicago Bulls.
Okay.
Look, Chicago's one of those teams that's sort of battling right now. I thought they were going to be sort of the, closer to the bottom of the East. Right now they're in 10th, I believe. 17 and a half out, 3
Hold on,
out.
you had
from
them in
Miami,
your 10, didn't you, if I remember correctly? Because I think you had them in the 10, and I was going to...
Did I have them in 10?
I think you did.
Hold on.
Hold on. I remember
No.
I was thinking about
I'll give it to you
swapping.
right.
I was thinking about swapping Detroit for Chicago. You almost sold me, and then I was like, I had them in my 10, and then I switched them for Detroit.
I did. I'm sorry.
Great
You're
memory.
right. I had them at 10.
My elephant.
Bogues, stepping up. I like that. Remembering, I like it.
Yeah.
I had them at 28 and 54, for the year.
And the reason I remember it was
then,
because it was the Detroit. I had Detroit in instead of Chicago, and then you had Chicago, and I was like, oh, fuck, I think you might be right. I think Chicago might. That's the only reason why I remember.
Shit, fucking Detroit's going to win the fucking Eastern Conference this year, for God's sake, the way they're playing. So, hey, you're Noster bogus for that, for sure. But, look, they're a team that's really trying to hang in there in the play-in. Yeah, you don't know what they're going to do, but they've really struggled of late. I think they lost 4 in a row. And, remember I like I said, Bogues, with the when you lose into certain teams and, you got to sort of be called to the fire. They've lost in the last 4. They've lost to Sac, New Orleans, Atlanta, Charlotte. I mean, when you lose into multiple places where Southwest Airlines is the fucking hub of that city, I think you're in some problems. But they gotta.
I agree.
Look, they've had most of their rotation and they've had most of their rotation healthy the last 10 games. This is the first time in a while they've had that. Look, Giddey's playing, White's playing, Levine's averaging 28 in the last 10. Patrick Williams is underachieving. What else is new?
Touch on that, because Trent was talking about that off air before we came in. Why do you think? What's the deal there? Because he's a young 5th pick, right, Trent?
Yeah, fifth pick.
It seems like they've leaked that he's on the table, right?
Yeah,
he's available.
that he's available for trade.
On top of like all their vets, you think he's a guy that would have kept around with the younger pieces. But what's the story there, in your opinion, Pro?
Well, Bogues, he's just inconsistent. Like he is the poster boy for like NBA inconsistencies, for a guy over his career. Not like a bad guy or anything like that, but he has a ton of talent, a ton of upside. But now you're into I think he's into year 5. And my rule is year 5, you are who you are in the NBA. And he really can't turn the corner. Like, he can't turn the corner on being like a big time shooter, like doing anything great. He's just sort of one of those guys that floats. And I'm not saying that may not even a bad thing. And to be honest with you, in this day and age, like he's averaging like 9 and 5. 9 and 5 will get you 18 million a year anyway. So no one gives a fuck. But like he just hasn't been able to get a consistent sort of rhythm to his game in the NBA, and he's just up and down. And he's just one of those guys. He's
one of those guys. What is he? What's his number
he's like
one strength?
He's like a 3-4 energy.
Yeah, like his comp coming into the league was like a Kawhi Leonard comp. Like that's what he was like looked at as coming out of college.
Last 18 months, Kawhi Leonard maybe, but not fucking not any type of Kawhi Leonard. He's more like fucking Johnny Leonard. But like my thing is, I think that he falls into what most NBA players at his age does, Bogues. Like right away, they don't solidify what they are. They don't do anything great. They just sort of okay at a lot of things. And then they just sort of fizzle out. I thought like Boris Diaw was going to be like that early on in his career when he was in Atlanta, until he just sort of had a come to Jesus moment, when he went to Phoenix and had places like, and then San Antonio, and then he just sort of solidified himself as a defender, smart player, like can handle the ball, straight line drive. He just can't do anything right now that he could hang his hat on. Look, he's an NBA player for sure. He's a rotation guy, but he should be a starter and should be one of those guys who's like a 3rd best player in a team. Right now, I don't think he can be. I think that, Yeah, I think right now he's just sort of like that rotation guy. It's inconsistent. Can't really, shoot it at a high clip consistently. Can't really be that alpha dog, on stretches of time in the NBA where you really need to. I always talk about PJ Washington, but PJ Washington's inconsistent, but he's got that dog in him where like 3 nights out of every 10, he could drop 22, 23. Now the other 6 or 7, he'll probably drop you like 9 or 10 or 11. But like, it's sort of like that, but at least PJ could turn the corner a little bit and give you something.
Yeah.
Patrick really hasn't been able to do that consistently, and that's okay. I mean, he better have it, you better be ready to move every couple of years, because now it's going to be like if you get traded and then go to this team and that team and this team. He's one of those guys that could sort of do that. He just needs to get consistent. He needs to be consistent shooting the ball, defending people, showing up every night, and giving something that's going to impact winning. And I don't think he has that yet, that he's really found what really impacts winning for him.
Yeah, it's just been an interesting one. He's a talented guy, just can't put it together. But you see a lot of those guys. Maybe a change of scenery will be best for both teams. There was a trade last week, Nick Richards for Okogie and 3 second-round picks to Phoenix. This could spell the end of Nurkic for the Phoenix Suns, I believe, right? Like they're playing Plumlee now a lot, and Richards is going to step into that, probably the starter's role, if not the backup minutes, right?
Yeah, he started for them in his first game. He had I believe 20 and 10.
Perfect role playing big. Doesn't need the ball, does the little things. So I think Nurkic is definitely on his way out. I think he comes back. I don't see him getting the backup minutes over Plumlee. So I think the time's over. They'll be trying to move Nurkic at all costs if they can. I'm not sure what his contract situation is. I don't think it's too bad, but his fall from grace on that team is, and I want to circle back on what I said. I just never thought it was a good fit. I thought the roster that they have putting together with a big three, you need a role playing big, and Nurk needs the ball. Nurkic isn't a kind of fear defender, rebounder, shot blocker. He's kind of a undersized, kind of like a poor man's. I wouldn't compare him to Şengün, but like a lower center of gravity. Good, flip shots, post ups, can shoot the three every now and then, but needs the ball to be effective. He's not a guy that you're going to be like, get me 10 boards and 2 blocks and just, you might get 6 points. He'll start getting pissed off by not getting touches. So I always scratch my head at that fit.
He's a food stamps version of Şengün, if you're going to compare him to Şengün. Do you know the story behind Nurkic, how he sort of got discovered by his agent?
No.
Dad's a cop, right? I forgot where his dad's a cop at.
Bosnia.
Bosnia, right? So there's a bar fight, gets surrounded. He knocks out 14, his dad knocks out 14 guys by himself. The agent reads about this in the newspaper. 14 fucking guys, both. And then he flies to Bosnia to meet the dad. And he asks him, "Do you have a son?" And he says, "Yes." He takes the son sight unseen, right? This was age 14 or 13, 14, takes him to Slovenia and fucking just works him out, puts him on a team, gets him going, and then boom, he's a fucking player. And then don't forget, he was drafted over Jokic, same team. Denver drafts him in the first round. And he's another guy who just hasn't been able to turn the corner and really be a prominent, big, consistent, third best player on a team kind of guy, which he has some skill sets to be able to do that. And he just really hasn't come into his own to that. He got dealt, from Denver after a couple of years to Portland and, Portland, Phoenix, right? And he really hasn't been able to do that. It's a pretty common theme, Bogues, more than people would even to pay attention to, about all these players with all this talent that really can't center in on one thing that they can do that really is great, and then just sort of build their game around that. And you're right, with the big three they built in Phoenix, he needed to be someone who could just, set screens, roll hard, pass out of that short roll when the defense rotates up, to be able to hit cutters or hit spot up guys.
He's never been that, though.
And then just,
that's why I scratch my head at it. He's never been that. He's always had issues with, in Denver, they had Jokic backing him up. He'd pad about touches at times and get frustrated, which is every player goes through that. But there comes a point in your career, you're playing next to Kevin Durant, Booker, Beal. You're like, okay, I'm fourth, fifth fiddle in this. Let me just figure out my role. I guarantee you, his focus of 10 rebounds, 2 block shots, couple of make the right play out of those pick and rolls. He's still there playing 30 minutes, but that's never been his game. So when they brought him in, I was like, that's not going to fit. Now he brought in. That's why Plumlee's starting over him, because Plumlee does that. He doesn't care about touches. He sets physical screens. He's not going to pout. He's going to protect the rim and he's going to rebound. You don't need a big to score 15 a night when you got couple of Hall of Fame scorers sitting right next to you.
Yeah. But let me give you a little advice for players at all levels, NBA all the way down to high school. Like, look, you may not be in the role that you want to be in right now, but if you can't, like, you have to play the game. Like, whatever, like I always tell players, look, think of yourself in jail, and the only one that's going to get you out, the warden of the jail, is your head coach. So whatever role that you need to play, just like smile at it and play that role and dominate the things that they want you to do. And then when you build up that equity where you're really doing well and setting screens, rebounding, all that, then you start to build out your game a little bit. And then once they trust you to do the things that they need you to do, they'll give you a little bit more and a little bit more. It's happened almost every place I've ever been and player that I've ever worked with. You be able to do that instead of sulking, because look, after the top 3 on your team, nobody gives a fuck. I always say the whole Titanic, rearrange the deck chairs of Titanic, because it's true. After the top 100 players in the NBA, no one really, they don't really care. You could have, Dyson Daniels on this team, Giddey on this team, Hartenstein on this team. You could have, Porzingis on this team. I think I just picked 6 random white guys. I better start, giving you a little diversity there. But you could have you could have Bradley Beal on this team. Actually, Bradley's in the top 100. I can't really say that. But it all changes. Marcus Smart, you got to play your role, what they need
probably
you to
even
do.
Top 2. You probably even sharpen it to top 2.
No doubt about it.
We're seeing that third wheel get moved now quite easily.
Yeah, but those guys are the guys like Nurkic of the world, if they want to be that little bit of a go-to guy. Now, he'll never be a go-to guy in the league. It doesn't really matter. I don't give a fuck if I don't care if you play him in 2K. He's not going to be a franchise guy like that. But you could have your role considerably changed, but you can't be, so it's a weird deal. There should be a 30 for 30 about his career, about how it's gone the way it's gone. As far as the last 2 weeks or 3 weeks in Phoenix, he went from a guy that, he wasn't doing great or whatever, but you never heard of him having that huge issue. Then he had that swinging thing, I think a year ago or this season with Draymond. And then all of a sudden now they just sort of X'd him out.
And the fight, the fight then with Dallas, right? Was it Dallas? Who did he slap?
Where?
He slapped someone just recently.
Oh, yeah, Dallas.
PJ
right,
Washington,
but
right? Or Najee Marshall and PJ Washington.
Najee Marshall
then he fell out of the rotation, stopped starting. Then he was sick, hasn't played for a while with sickness of some sort. So, there's all that going on as well. I think that these days are numbered in Phoenix if he comes back. And now they've won 3 straight. So, good luck. Yeah. Good luck getting any minutes when you get back. So, they're going to, whether you like it or not, you look like the odd man out. You're the one causing the issues, and they're going to have to move off him. But, yeah, I mean, it's a good trade. I think it's a really good trade for Phoenix. It's something that didn't really think they had much leverage to do much other than the Beal deal. This was one that I definitely didn't expect. So it's good for them. I think it makes their team better. All right. Have you seen the rival league to the NBA coming out, Pro?
I heard about it with Maverick Carter is sort of one of the people trying to pitch investors, right?
Yeah, investors seek $5 billion for basketball league to rival NBA. The backers are advised by LeBron James' business partner. They're raising money. They're trying to sell it. I mean, his backers include Skype co-founder Jeff Prentice, former Facebook executive Grady Burnett, bunch of heavy hitters that are involved in numerous funds. So they'll probably get the money, but the league is envisioned to comprise of 6 men's and 6 women's teams with games played in 8 cities around the world with 2 weeks in each city. The global rotation is modeled on a similar schedule to that of Formula One, and Singapore is one of the markets where games will be played. So very similar to Formula One would mean, they're basically on a tour bus going around the world. I don't know how this works. They're trying to say it's not trying to rival the NBA, because it's a completely different league. It's 6 women, 6 men's. We play in 2 weeks in each city, and Harlem Globetrotter-ish, but more real would be the way they're going on. But the move comes after the NBA's return to China following an absence for several years, which is rekindling interest in the game across the world's number 2 economy. That entrenched popularity means it'll be hard for any other competitive league to the NBA competing for airtime. But interesting one. I mean, $5 billion's a pretty big war chest to get things started. I don't see it. I don't see how you build, a culture, especially in Europe, with a 2 week 2 weeks. We're here 2 weeks. Come support these teams. You're gonna have to get names. NBA is not gonna really lose, like you said. Talking about the top 100, what you're going to get some of those other names outside of the top 100. It's like, okay, not needle movers marketing wise, unless you're going to get 4 or 5 top 50 players and somehow poach them. I just don't see people wanting to go watch these. I wouldn't go watch it personally, so it doesn't make sense to me. And it's just a strange thing. When they do it in the off season. The NBA obviously wouldn't allow you to play in it. It's interesting. I think it's just a lot of talk right now. I just don't know how it gets up, bro.
Bogues, to me, now when are they talking about doing it, Bogues? Like when during the year? They talked about that?
There's no timeline. It's in the infancy stage. Okay,
but they don't know if it's going to be in the summer, winter.
No, they don't. It just says modeled on Formula One. Formula One runs all year round. So.
Yeah, from Feb till about November is the F1 calendar, and then they have like 3 months off. So it would be right.
So I think by modelling they mean more towards that it's going to be flying to a city,
right?
Make it a thing for
right. Yeah.
But the scheduling would probably be on a 12-month calendar with an off month here and there. But I don't know. It's weird, really weird, because you don't have no tie to a team. Like it's just like basically a tournament or whatever. But you have no affiliation, I don't care, or I go see a star maybe once or twice, and then I'd rather support my local team. That to me is a purist in sport, but people are different.
Yeah, no. First of all, you're not going to get anybody significant. Like, okay, you might get European players that you could pay more than their clubs, but a lot of times those guys are going to really play with their club. Like I don't think unless you're paying out the ass.
Needle movers in China. Like you get the best EuroLeague player going to China. The Chinese are like, who?
And then so in the NBA, and you're coming back. So I mean, obviously they're putting $5 or $6 billion into it. It's sort of like thinking about like Saudi Arabia trying to get like Live Golf or something like that. So
Ronaldo,
like to me, I don't think you're not going to get Giannis, you're not going to get Luka, you're not going to get anybody really Durant. But where you might get is like a Nicholas Batum. You pay him like $20 million. You're going to get like Malik Beasley for like $27 million. You're going to get guys like like someone like that. You're going to get Desmond Bain for like $60 million. Like, how are you going to structure this? Because nobody in the top 20, top 30 are going to leave unless you're going to give them crazy money.
Maybe they go after the big 3 prospects.
Yeah, I mean, seriously, like that's the thing you have to think about. And then like, it's like any other league. I think it's going to be, you might get some like ESPN might throw some money at it as far as like getting, airing the games, streaming the games and things like that. I think it's a money grab, to be honest with you. I think like, hey, let's get this thing formulated and let's get it, tied up in a bow and sold early and then make our money and then just leave it. It can't really make money, in my opinion. Now, again, I'm no businessman, but you're not going to get top players. You're not going to get top players in Europe. You're not going to get top players in the NBA. Even if you do get top players in Europe, like what they're not going to really, it's not really going to move the needle. And the NBA players that you need, you're going to be getting role players and having to pay them like 6 times their market value to be able to come over there instead of being in the NBA. It just, NBA is everything that people have known. And I understand that these days, everybody's just trying to like throw monkey wrenches in everything and sort of like, create this competition, but you're not competing in the NBA. There's too much infrastructure. You got no infrastructure in this league. It's not like you're going to go and have these home cities and build up. If you do go to a city, wouldn't they have just made an NBA team anyway at that city? So I don't see it really working. I think they'll try. Look, Maverick Carter, he's got a lot of reach. He's got a lot of power. A lot of the people that are affiliated have the power there to try to get something off the ground. But I just don't think I don't think it's a league that could really make money like that.
Yeah, it's going to be tough. And look, the NBA is on record trying to figure out how to dabble in the international market with legitimate NBA teams slash, seasonal games there. So this could be a segue into that, like you said, that they're trying to set something up now and then maybe just pawn it off to the NBA to use infrastructure and whatnot. But $5 billion is a big war chest, but I don't see it. I wouldn't really support it. But we'll follow that space and see how it goes. All right, more LeBron lies. So you wanted me to add this one, Pro. So you want to break this one down for me like you did in the text, but for those not familiar,
Sure.
This stems from a comment that LeBron last week talked about playing against Michael Jordan and a bunch of other NBA superstars when he was 16, was it? 15, 16?
Yeah.
And being quote-unquote unguardable and dominating. Go ahead.
Yeah, so one of my employees for 10 years was a gentleman named Tim Grover. Tim Grover was Michael Jordan's trainer out of Chicago. Was probably the first guy to take multiple NBA clients and work them out in the off season and with the weights and the basketball.
And to build that big gym out in Chicago too, yeah.
Yeah, he had a big gym, but at the time he had this basketball facility that it was called Hoops to Gym. There was 3 courts, and basically it's one of the first basketball facilities I've ever seen. And it was just 3 courts, and what he would do is he would work guys would start coming in at like 8 a.m. Like all these all-stars. He had about 25 NBA clients where like they come in 8 a.m., work out on the court, get, work in the weight room, and then they grab some lunch. And then at 3 o'clock, he would bring in, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, you bring in these NBA referees, 3 NBA refs to ref these games that he would have. And they would, a lot of times they would have 1 court, but sometimes they'd have 2 and 3 courts. Now, I'm not sure on the timing of this, Bogues, but I think it was when MJ was either coming back or just retired. I forgot what the time was. LeBron's draft year was 2003, so I'm thinking this is like 2001.
Wizards. Yeah, Wizards.
Right, at the Wizards. So like in 2001, so MJ has all these guys, and with Grover too, which made Tim great, is he was not inclusive. He was very exclusive, where it didn't matter who you weren't getting in his gym. I've seen him cuss people out, swear at them, wouldn't let cameras in, didn't care who you were. If you're on the list, you're in. If you're not on the list, you're not there. And they had the best of the best at the time. MJ, I think KG was there during that time as far as just to playing games. Antoine Walker, Michael Finley, Juwan Howard, all those guys, probably had Jerry Stackhouse, Ron Artest, guys like Jimmy Jackson would show up. I mean, he would have the best of the best at that time come into Chicago and play in these games. And, they invited, because LeBron was just coming on the scene right then, like in 01, 2000, 01, 02. 2000 and 01 was sort of his years where he's finally started coming up. And then they invited him to play. And so from what he said, he was on a podcast, he said from the second he checked in, he busted everybody's ass, including Michael. And which I thought was interesting, because I worked there for 10 years. And the same guys worked there at that time that worked there, when I worked. And they told me about LeBron coming in at 16. And I asked him, I said, how did he look? And he said, hey, look, he was good. I mean, you wouldn't expect a 16-year-old kid to play. The one thing they did say that he wasn't afraid and he played hard. But mostly they said he just sort of fit in. Made some passes, couple good plays here and there, but was nothing spectacular. But if you're ranking him, if you're trying to evaluate him as a high school kid, he did really well. But nothing as far as taking over games and things like that. So the funny thing is, Bogues, so I heard that thing with LeBron said. I didn't really care. I knew it was a lie, a lie to that extent, because everyone I've talked to, about 12 people that were in the gym that day, in the last 10, 15 years. I even forgot about the story, but I remember talking to multiple people, almost 20 people that were there, agents, players, staff. And they said the same thing. Like, he was good. Great passer, made some unbelievable passes, but not like he dominated, not even close. So LeBron says what he said, and then somebody, of course, the internet being undefeated, they pull up a clip of Maverick Carter talking about that day and saying that, yeah, he didn't really stand out, made some great passes, just wanted to fit in. So that fit what I thought 1,000%. 1,000% of what I heard and the intel that I got, that was collaborated through the story of Maverick Carter, his guy. So, I guess
I
you
just
throw
don't
it
get
in
it.
the.
Why does he lie? Like, it's just like you're going to. Some people argue you already are, or you're in the top 3. You're in the conversation with the best basketball player of all time, right? Like, you set numerous records. You played 20 plus years. You set the scoring record. Like, it speaks for itself. Like, I just don't understand why you need to lie about stupid shit that is easily, like you said, someone with Asperger's on the internet will just go back and troll Twitter and Facebook and whatnot. They're going to find something. They can find anything. These people, like there's people with too much time on their hands. But just why lie? Like it's like carrying the book that's always on the same page every time he gets photographed with a book. And it's like then he gets asked
Godfather
about
too.
Asked the Godfather, and then he gets asked about the book, and he's like, "Yeah, it's a great book." It's like, can you give us more? Yeah, I'm really enjoying reading. Like, bro, like why? I just don't understand. Like, you don't need to do it. You don't need to do it.
Look, the one thing that's missing, not only from LeBron, but from a lot of the players today, the younger guys, like they don't have that Michael and a lot of the guys had, and not all of them had it, but a lot of them had. They had grace. They've had the respect of other people. When they were over their head in a situation to the most, like when they're on the court with other great players, they call that out, meaning what's the problem with saying, look, they had some great players in the court that day. I just wanted to fit in and do what I needed to do at 16 and compete. And I'm just glad I was on the court with those guys. And it was an honor to be there. Instead of people thinking that people are going to think anything, bad of you about you or negative, that you weren't the best player.
Yeah, you're no longer the GOAT because you didn't dominate at 16.
Now I did see him. I worked Michael Jordan's camps in Santa Barbara, and I talked about this a lot, on the show. But he had a camp in Santa Barbara. We had 750 kids a week paying $750 all over the world. It wasn't a great talent camp, but what he did was he brought in some of the best players in college as counselors, in high school players as counselors. I mean, LeBron, Yao Ming. I mean, not at the same time, but he had LeBron, Yao Ming, Amari Stoudemire, Jay Williams, and then all these, big time Al Jefferson, Rudy Gay. I mean, he probably had 20 kids there a summer to work and to play at night. So what happens was the camp, was an overnight camp, and at night they would have these games that they would UC Santa Barbara, they would have MJ would play probably 4, 5, 6 games where all these top college guys that would be first round picks, with him, and then other NBA players that would drive up from LA, you'd have Alonzo Mourning would play, Darius Miles would play, Quentin Richardson would play, and LeBron played. And I mean, he was really good in those games. I mean, he definitely, it was one of the best high school performances against NBA players that I've ever seen. Not that he dominated, but he was at a high level for sure. He didn't just try to fit in there. So there, I would say, yeah, really good, no doubt about it. But he probably should have went to that story instead.
Maybe that was a story. Maybe he got confused. Give him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe he got
confused. He mentioned hoops to Jim, man. I mean, I don't think he knows Michael Corleone from Johnny Corleone, but I don't think he knows Michael Corleone from the king from Burger King, but saying that he read The Godfather. And there's a tell. Anytime LeBron looks constipated, he's thinking of a lie. I love watching people as far as getting their tell. I've had guys, I've known guys like that before. When they get that constipated look on their face, he's not going to tell the truth. He's searching for something. But I'm just saying, there's no reason. Look, LeBron's one of the best. You know me, I hate that who's the best player of all time debate. Look, whoever you say. I don't care. I'm not holding that against him. But there's no reason to lie about that, especially when there are other people in the gym.
Dumb shit.
It's funny. I'm a LeBron historian. I told you I was in the gym that day. You ever hear the story about that college kid dunking on him in a Nike
Jordan Crawford
and a Nike
Jordan
game
Crawford.
Jordan Crawford.
Yeah,
and then they
the footage.
the Nike people.
CIA.
The Nike people Nike people were going around the gym collecting phones and cameras. I never seen anything like it.
You were
If you
there?
saw the grainy footage, I was there with my friend Rod Baker. We were on the baseline right when it happened. And then it was like literally 3.5 minutes later, there were people scouring the gym for anybody that took footage of it.
I'd love to hear what you said when they asked for your phone.
Oh my God. I wasn't taking any pictures at the time, but yeah, but it's just, you gotta let guys get their ass kicked once in a while. In like newsflash, he kicked that guy's ass for 99.9% of the game. He gets dunked on one time. Who cares? But that's the whole thing that I think people, they roll their eyes when it comes to LeBron at times, and it's nothing to do with on the court. It's all the there's things like that where, like, look, you got fucked up one time, one play, whatever. And then, okay, maybe at that day in Chicago, you weren't like the best player in the court. Who cares? You're 16 going against the best in the league, and you held your own to a certain degree. That's something that you could hang your hat
100%.
on and be happy about. But like, to make up a story is just.
And just lying.
Yeah,
when you lie, in press conferences, NBA press conferences that have millions of eyeballs, there's going to be experts in the field you're lying about, right? So, like, I watched the last Joe Rogan had Mark Zuckerberg on. This is a random example, but for those not familiar, Joe Rogan is a very avid bow hunter, and Zuckerberg, for some reason, starts talking about, I'm a bow hunter now and I do this, and like,
oh,
it's the wrong guy, like, to have, if you're lying, right, to have that conversation with. So Rogan's like, oh, what type of bow do you have? And he's like, oh yeah, that type. Oh, yeah. Couldn't even name a brand of a bow. And you're like, it's the wrong guy. It's like trying to lie to me about something to basketball, like that's where I've lived my whole life, or trying to lie to, it's. You got to also pick your audience. When you do it publicly on a public forum that has the eyeballs the NBA does, like you're lying about, reading the book, Martin Luther King book that you've got, and someone asks you and actually knows about the book, you're fucked. Like, you're dead set fucked.
Constipated face.
Yeah. You're just
when like when he looks constipated,
it's hilarious,
like, I'm telling you,
I just don't get it.
If you find yourself at Caesar's Palace and you see LeBron and he goes all in and he looks constipated, go all in. Because he's gonna lose. He's got nothing but 9 high. That's it. Yeah, so go all in.
I don't
Constipation equals all in.
Another chapter to whoever's done that online, and someone's chronicled all the lies back to back that he's done in his career. There's another one to add. All right, Bobby Hurley. This is very interesting. So in 2024, head coach Bobby Hurley, Arizona State, right? Is that right, Pro? Arizona State?
Yeah, Arizona State.
Proposed a TV docuseries revolving around ASU men's basketball. So it was in talks with major Hollywood producers and streaming platforms to create a made-for-TV docuseries leveraging Hurley's personal NIL success as a player and coach to forge Fortune 500 brand partnerships with the intent to further increase the visibility of the men's basketball program. With the expected extra nil or money coming in from the show, ASU was able to land the 7th best class in the country. Reports have now come out that the docuseries has officially been cancelled and will no longer air. Without the show, rumours and reports have said ASU can no longer pay what was promised to their recruits. Dun dun. What happens, bro?
Bogues, as a good friend of mine said when we talk about NIL all the time, we from NIL to revenue share, to all this stuff, there's just not enough money in the world to go around for this thing to work long term the way it's structured. And and ASU just falls into what a lot of these teams fall into. You have to, you want to keep up with the Jeffersons and you want to keep paying people. It's going to become a problem, and you just keep on throwing money and more money and more money, and you can't sustain it. Like the Power 4 schools, the schools that are in the top 4 conferences in the country, the real money makers, the Big Tens and the the ACCs and things like that, Big 12, SEC. You have to get in the revenue share game. NIL is different. Like NIL is, you go to donors, you get your collective in NIL. Like it sits in a pot, you spend your money however you want to do it. basketball, football, what have you. And then the revenue share, if you want to get in on the revenue share part of this, you have to put up $25 million additionally to your school for your school, it's just sort of NIL on steroids. It's 25 more million. When you're asking your donors for all this money and then just to compete and you keep on asking them and it keeps on going up and you're going after this player and that player, it's a problem. But now with ASU, look, to ASU, it's hard for them to compete. No one really wants to go to ASU. No offense to Bobby Hurley or anyone else. So now, I mean, they did have a big time recruiting class, but now you're trying to get this money and raise money, and you probably can't get the money that you want, and now you're earmarking this money based on this Netflix show. It's a problem, and you start seeing it too, Bogues, like Rick Barnes from Tennessee saying, I sat a guy and I looked him in the eye and said, I took you out because you're not doing what we pay you to do, make shots. You got Rick Pitino talking today or yesterday in a press conference saying that, he had a guy from Seton Hall transfer to him, and he goes, look, if the money was the same, he's staying at Seton Hall. If the money was close, he's staying at Seton Hall. It's not close. We could afford it. They can't. Basically, it's what he's saying. Folks, this NIL thing is just getting out of control, and a lot of teams can't afford it. Look,
so what happens,
Kentucky,
what happens to ASU? If ASU can't pay, is there what does the NCAA do? This hasn't happened before, right? So it's like, what's the precedent? What happens? Obviously, the guys are going to try to transfer in the off season, but we're mid-season right now in these kids' careers. They're not getting paid what they were promised. What happens? Because you're going to fine them. They've got no money.
No, Bogues. A lot of times, so like there a couple of really popular cases in football. One most recently was UNLV, where a player was promised like 100,000, 150,000 NIL. When he got there, signed it, what have you, and then ended up being like, not getting paid, so he transferred. There was one, and a lot of times they see it, Bogues, where a coach will say, we're going to pay you $2 million, and then it ends up being like 875,000 or $1.2 million, or much less than they said. There's a Florida State coach that's getting sued right now by 3 former players, one of which is the son of an assistant coach that works for him, that said that like he promised them a certain amount of NIL money that, through emails and communications that he didn't get done. They can't do anything, Bogues. The NCAA is really not attached to this NIL for what I believe, for what I think, and no, I could be
the school or the
wrong
coach,
on this.
essentially.
So it's a school, yeah. So you either sue the school. A lot of these guys don't sue the school. They end up just like leaving. They just end up transferring to another school and whatnot anyway. But
this Bogues, shit, if they've got promised 3, 4, 5 million each for this, if it's the 7th best class, some of them are on 3 or 4, 5 million, and they're getting none of that. There's going to be massive court cases, and this is going to be a huge. It's relatively new. I don't think it's well thought out. It's like, okay, we'll just do it the Euro way. We'll promise you 5 million euro, and you come and we give you 1 million euro. And like, what are you going to do about it?
I gotta think that they got paid to a certain degree, like up to this point. I didn't read into it. If I had a guess, I would say that it's not like they didn't get paid anything, but
yeah, of course,
they're probably gonna.
What do you mean anything? You
have a
shortfall. 5 million and you're getting 500,000. You're like, hang on a second. I've already bought a nice Bentley and bought my parents a house. So it's going to be interesting with NIL. What do you got on this? You got some good news for us on this new women's league, the 3-on-3.
Yeah, it just opened up in Miami this past weekend, and
you said it was a
3-on-3 full court. So I told you I listened to Scalabrini and Frank Isola in Sirius Radio almost every morning, and they were talking about it. I didn't know this about the league. They were talking about it last week, I think on Friday, and they said that like the website for the league, because no one knows these teams. Like no one, like the teams are like weird because again, you have the WNBA that happens in the summer. Now you have this unrivaled league that's going to happen now for the next like 2 months, and it's basically they set it up basically so good WNBA players don't have to go overseas to play, during this time, which the NBA don't have to do that, but the WNBA, they play their WNBA season, which most of them make less money anyway, but they'll play in the summer of the WNBA. And then like when their season's done in like September or so, like 3 weeks later, they got to go overseas and make their money, to play. So they play year round. So now the WNBA, or not the WNBA, but other people, invested into this league, so a lot of these girls and women don't have to go over.
Yeah.
So anyways, look, the WNBA, we talked about this until we're blue in the faces. They don't really know a lot of the players. Caitlin Clark, a few others, Aja Wilson, there's a few that they know, most of them they don't. So now you have this other league that no one knows about really. It's 3-on-3 full court, shortened court. They play in one arena, under 1,000 people in this arena. They're paying these girls and women pretty good money to go, especially the really good players.
And True TV, so it's on big networks.
So it's no doubt about it. So they put a lot of money into this league, but the problem is I don't know how they're going to make their money back. But the most interesting thing was they don't know the teams anyway. They barely know the players. They know a few, but not many. Now the league, the website, you go to the team rosters, and they have these women's. They have their nicknames on the rosters. So like,
yeah, I'm on it now. So there's a club called the Laces. They're called the Laces Basketball Club. They've got one girl. So the roster says Jackie, and then you click on it. It's Jackie Young. There's another one called Tip, which is Tiffany Hayes. There's McBuckets, which is Kayla McBride. AT, Lisa Thomas, Money Martin, and one of them's Big Mama. I should be happy about that nickname. Stephanie Dolson.
I get what they're trying. I get what they're trying to do. Like, I get what they're trying to do.
Not well known enough yet, though. Not well known enough.
But they're not well known enough to do it.
Not
like,
by
you got to build this. You got to spend all your sponsorship money. I'm sorry, all your marketing money, as far as marketing these players' names, so people start to know them, their real name, and then you could build this up. But to have that is pretty interesting. To me, and then how are you going to make your money back? Like, you can't have this in like 20,000 seat arenas, but to have an arena at like 3,000, 3,500 to try to make your money back with that, it's sort of like it looks like the bubble, actually. It looks like the arena they play in. It's sort of dark and, it's really dark in the back. You can't see. And then it's this court and everybody plays in the same court. I don't know, man. It's just an interesting deal. But the whole nickname thing, it's like I told you, it's like, you know me, I know nothing about the NBL besides the basic of basics. It's like you saying, you telling me the starting point guard of the Sydney Kings is the Kangaroo Slayer. And I'm like, who the fuck is that? And you're like, oh, it's this guy. And I'm like, okay, well, why don't you fucking tell me it's this guy? Like, I don't know it, and most people don't. And
it's too,
the same thing with this.
You have
league.
to learn it on. Like
tough.
NBA nicknames take a while to know the guy, and then they get a nickname and they become a superstar. It's the same kind of thing. So, first year we'll give it a pass in the first year and see how it goes, but not too optimistic. And then finally, yes, FIBA Hall of Fame for yours truly. It is basketball news, so I'm not blowing my own horn essentially, but I got the call in December. Funny story. So I get the call from someone from Basketball Australia calls me and says, hey, FIBA's trying to desperately get in contact with you. And I'm like, oh, fuck, what do I do? Checking tweets.
Yeah, what do you piss off this time?
What have I done? And then basically got them in touch with my PA and then hashed out that they need to talk on the phone urgently. So still was like, what is going on here? And then got the call and they let me know in December, which is pretty cool. And obviously winning an under-19 gold medal and playing in 3 Olympics and 2 FIBA World Championships or World Cups. So something I didn't expect, bro, and I don't think, in all seriousness, before you make a stupid joke, it's you don't play for these kinds of things. They happen once you retire, and I'm very, very proud to be inducted, but I didn't expect it, and it's not something that I played for. So I have to go to Bahrain in May for the ceremony, so that'll be good, and take the family and enjoy it.
Bogues, just so you know, I had to talk to the FIBA people, and I told them you busted Sabonis' ass when you were 11 years old, so that's how you got in. So I just want to let you know.
I did.
So when you were 11, so I just want to let you know.
But yeah, some good news. All right, useful, useless. Here's one for you, Pro. Joel Embiid has not played in Denver for 5.2 years, and he has been ruled again. He has been ruled out again on Tuesday at the Nuggets. Useful, useless.
I'd say it's a useful thing. I mean, it's probably just a. I mean,
You can't say it's a coincidence because last season he was healthy and he took it off when it was last season he won the MVP. It was last season, right? Was Joel MVP? Yeah. He took it off because there was that whole battle about it's going to really help his MVP voting if he goes in there and dominates, and then the altitude. He's never in the best shape. And Jokic,
maybe he ran out on a IHOP bill when he was in high school playing there in Cherry Hill.
Man, but it's
that Cherry Hill deal. He's
starting to become consistent, bro. Starting to become a consistent thing with him. The altitude, Jokic, always MVP. So just another week. I think it's pretty useful that some degenerate on the internet to dug this stat up. We'll see if it's 6 years. All right, this is very interesting. So pay attention, pro. Highest offensive rating in NBA history is 123.2. Right. The Nuggets with Jokic on the floor this season. 125.8. So it would be an all-time record. The worst offensive rating in NBA history, 92.2.
Jokic off the court.
Jokic off the court, 86.3.
Oh, that's useful
Which
as
would
hell,
put them
man.
in the all-time worst offense with him off the court.
They go from the 86 Celtics to the Washington fucking Generals and it just subbing the guy out.
Wild stat.
That's unbelievable. I mean, both. I mean, I don't get into MVP things or anything like that. I don't really care. But it's unbelievable what Jokic does on the floor. I mean, from the passing to the scoring to the shooting to just doing what he does. It's sometimes we take it for granted because it's sort of like Tim Duncan-ish, where we took Tim Duncan for granted, I thought, because he wasn't really flashy. He did what he did. He's a big guy. It just got it done. This guy gets it done at the highest of high levels. And it's unbelievable that, like, the whole Embiid thing, people are like scraping and fighting, Embiid's this, Embiid's that, but like the guy just never plays. And this guy plays.
That's the other thing, right? Like, I think his lack of athleticism contributes to him being healthy because he just never puts himself in situations where he's super high off the floor to get his legs taken out. He's physical, but he's not trying to fight you. Like, he's smart. Like, I think that heavily contributes to him not ever really getting hurt. Like, it's amazing how healthy he stays, right? Like, he plays.
Yeah, that prick. My owner's going to fire me in fantasy. I'm still in second place in my league, but I passed on him. First pick in the draft, I picked Luka, and I had Jokic right there. I'm like, you know what? Familiar, my guy. I'm in Dallas. And
shoot him a text. I'm sure he'll appreciate you losing your fantasy because he's hurt.
Man. I just don't want his brothers to show up at my house. But yeah, you're right.
No, I said shoot Luca a text saying, "You gonna play my fantasy team's at stake? I don't care about your health. Just get back on the court for my fantasy team."
Jesus Christ, please, just save me. Just save me.
Okay, moving on to Aussie of the week. We have Dyson Daniels, best week for the Australians. Giddy, kind of a down week, inconsistent, some high rebound and assist numbers, but not really shooting the ball well. And Giddy's had a really good week, 13.3 points, 5.3 rebounds, 3.3 assists, 2.3 steals per game. Above what he was the last couple of weeks as far as scoring, rebounding, but steals are on par, and he continues to have a very good season, and Atlanta are balling at the moment. So he has now, Josh Giddey's officially threatened for the crown of Aussie of the Week. Giddey's got 4, Dyson 3, Simmons 1. Fact or fake news, pro? What do you got?
Bogues, we're just going to go back on something that's been in the news the last couple of weeks and just seeing what you think. Does Jimmy Butler get traded? Fact or fake news, Jimmy Butler will be traded. Now, look, it's obvious it's probably 90% he will, but A, finding a team, B, what are they going to give you? C, like, are you just going to be like, you know what, fuck it. Like, he's never in a good mood anyway. Let's just roll with it. Does does Jimmy Butler get traded? Fact or fake news?
Fact. I think they have to move him. I mean, at least he's come back. I haven't seen him play. I saw the stats. It looked like he was somewhat trying to compete. So that's a good thing. And I think he hurts his value the more he doesn't play hard, or hurts his legacy. So I think fact he will be traded. I think they're in a no-go zone. I mean, he's got a player option, right? So
player option.
Yeah, I think you got to move him now. Look, the only segue to that I would say is if he's not traded, he will be traded in the offseason. So does it happen before trade deadline? I think Miami has a bit of leverage there to get kind of what they want. The question is, do they tolerate him for another 3 or 4 months, just let it get to the offseason, then they can go full threshold, use the draft, really get what they want? That's the question. Miami's going to have to play that strategically.
Bogues, what do you do if you're Miami? Because right now they're sort of a middle pack team. Like, okay, so with Butler being not their best player, I would say that's Adebayo this year. What do you do, like, in this trade? Are you looking for something to keep you at the same level that you're at? Obviously, you're not going to get better with this trade, but do you take a guy? Okay, so like for instance, do you go to Milwaukee and be like, all right, we want Middleton, because Milwaukee will probably take him to get some toughness to back up Giannis.
Yeah.
It's not going to hurt. It's not going to help their shooting, but like, you'll probably have Middleton in that deal, and then another combination of players after that. But like, do you go with that type of trade, or do you go to the type where you're going to get as many draft picks as you can, and you're not going to get any great draft pick for Jimmy Butler at his age? You might get protected picks outside of the lottery, to get, or maybe 10 tops, but you probably won't. You're probably looking at anywhere, picks from 15 to 60. Majority of the picks will be 15 to 30, but 15 to 60 for the most part on your draft. Are you looking, because look, Pat Riley's not getting any younger. You can't, their salaries cap's pretty high. It's not like you could sign guys in free agency. Even if you take Jimmy's money off, you still have Adebayo, Hero,
Robinson,
and the other guys that you're paying. I'm sure they could, muster up some cap space and relief. But are you looking just to like swap it out and just say, look, we'll just get as many good players as possible and try to compete, try to get to the second round conference final maybe and limp through the playoffs? Or are you just saying, all right, fuck it, we're done. We're going to build around maybe Hero, and then clear everything else out. And then we're just going to be like, get young and see what we can do.
I think it's situational.
What?
I think it's situational. Depends on who, what, where, why, when. Like, I think.
What would you do?
It depends who the players are. Like, if it was, like we spoke about last week, a Zion type or something like that, where, definitely do that. Middleton, I'm not sure. That's an interesting one because of the injury history. He's what, 30s now, early 30s. So
probably 32, 33.
I prefer younger, maybe a couple of young gems that Miami think they can polish into the underrated guys on a roster, maybe a 7, 8, 9 guy that's young, that they could poach along with some picks would be ideal for me. I would just look like for like a star. The Riley age thing and all that is neither here or there. I think you got to do what's best, and if we can get a good star back that fits what we're trying to do and can give us. If it's Middleton, I don't think I don't know, Middleton and a throw-in maybe, yes, but Portis Jr. though, if for that conversation in somehow, then maybe. But they wouldn't do that. But I think he'd be a great fit there with his toughness.
Okay, so I'll throw you a few scenarios, and you tell me which one you would go after. 1, 2, 3. Zion, obviously New Orleans, we won. Chicago, Zach LaVine. All right, or I'll give you 4. So that's 2. The Middleton deal. So you got the Middleton deal. You got Zion. You've got Zion. You got LaVine on the 3rd, and the 4th you get expiring contract of an average player, and like above average player, whatever, just an expiring deal, and then you're getting 3 pick. You won't get 3 picks for Jimmy, but you'll get maybe you'll get 2. Maybe you'll get a pick swap in a late first round pick.
Nothing back that's helping straight away. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll go Zion out of that one. Levine, I don't do at all because you got Hero, doesn't fit. Both ball-hungry guys, and I don't love the Middleton deal for them. Like I said, if you can somehow navigate where you're getting something else, a Portis back or something like that, don't know what the salaries look like, then if it wasn't Zion, I'd go the young route other than those two. That's just me.
Yeah.
I think Zion, I think it's intriguing if they got him just because I think that they can salvage. I think it's a win-win for both parties. And if Zion's going to be something in this league, I think it's Miami. Spoke about it at length last week. They need to go through it, but that's where I would go. Otherwise, I'd go young. The other one that's in the conversation is Beal as well. That's a fifth one, right? Like
the most recent reports have that the Bucks would be willing to join the Suns Heat trade and acquire Bradley Beal. So Bradley would go to Milwaukee, Middleton to Miami, and then Butler to Phoenix.
That's interesting. Yeah. But for Miami, it gives you a solid scorer. Guy that's not going to cause problems. I get it, but I just don't know what direction. You don't really know what direction Miami's. Miami's kind of been in a stay professional and win as much as we can mode for the whole last decade. They've never really gone full blow up. So I don't see them going the young route, but I think they got to start thinking about the future a little bit because they've got some aging guys. You always hear that the Hero thing's not solid long term. They'd potentially look to move off him if they could. I think Bam's probably the only guy they wouldn't really move.
Bam's their Alonzo Mourning. Alonzo, exactly. How he was in the 90s there. That's their Alonzo Mourning. He's going to be their cornerstone. I can't really see them ever dealing him. I could see them dealing Hero for sure. But again, like they're at about 191 million next year, Bogues, right? In salary cap, give or take. And another guy they could move off of is Rozier, which I think is it's only a partially guaranteed deal and it's 26. So I mean, if you can get off of Jimmy's 52, which again, that the problem for Jimmy too is like if he opts out of the 52, right, and like no one's really so say he gets traded, whatever, right, like it's not like a team's gonna rip his deal up. It's not like he's gonna say, all right, we'll give you 3 years 90 or 3 years 105. Now you go and average 35, or you're getting 105 million versus a 52 million 1 year deal. His advanced age, the money, and then if he just opts out to say he's not traded, just say the 2% chance of not getting traded, he does it and he opts out of his deal at 52. There's not a lot of teams with cap or with a lot of cap room that's going to use it on a guy his age.
I don't think he's opted out. He can't afford he's not opting out. That's why I think they got leverage. A team really wants him right now. They can get it a little bit more out. Otherwise, they can just say we're just going to wait till off season and do it then, and then someone else will take him when you can mix in picks and whatnot. Right. So it will be interesting to see how that shit show goes. But a lot to go under the bridge for numerous teams. All right, Pro, we're off to NBL. You have your snooze, and we'll see you next week.
Hey, you and Trent have fun talking about the Kangaroo Slayer, motherfuckers.
We will.
Good.
We will.
Congratulations.
Thanks, man. See ya.
Yep. Later.
All right, wrapping up with NBL really quickly. Tasmania with a costly loss to New Zealand, albeit banged up. You feel for them a little bit. They're really stretched the limits of their roster, but very costly loss. That could be the loss for them, that if they fall out, that's the one they look back to. Cairns pummel Brisbane in what will likely be the nail in the coffin for Brisbane. They were on the outside looking in anyway, but that one really cost them. Perth edge out of Brave Adelaide in Perth. Southeast Melbourne handle New Zealand comfortably. Illawarra absolutely smacked Melbourne. Could have been much uglier. Melbourne grinded it back a little bit towards the end. Sydney grind out Tasmania, which was a very, very close game, but Sydney end up making an 11-point win. It was not that wide of a margin if you watched the whole game. 3.5 quarters, Tasmania had a chance to win the game. Adelaide then pummel Cairns behind 7 first quarter threes from DJ Vasiljevic. The one I wanted to touch on with you, Trent, is the Cairns. Did you watch the shootout by any chance?
No.
So the Cairns get they're at 108 now, I think it is, or 9, whatever they got. They're leading the summer shootout. For the fans not familiar with what summer shootout is, you can go on the website. Basically, every team had to pick a team they thought they'd score the most points against in January. If you are the number one team at the end of January, you get $50,000 for your team to use as you see fit, and a fan gets $50,000 if they guess the right amount. Now, I wasn't a fan of this summer shootout going in. You supported it's a league initiative. I get it. They're trying to bring more eyeballs. Something come up in this game that was very interesting. So Cairns were up by 20-odd points with a couple of minutes left, right? If I'm the coach, I would have went even harder than 40 did, but they fouled a couple of times on purpose to get the ball back, to give themselves more opportunities to score, up 20, right? And they didn't go, I would have gone way harder because I would have been like, you know what? Let's try to, we already win the game by 20. So what I'm trying to discuss here in the nitty gritty of this is this isn't good for the game. So if I'm a coach and we're up 20, let's say it's 95 to 75 and there's 4 minutes left, I'm now telling my team, like, we've pretty much won the game. 8-second offense, get it up as soon as you can. Basically let the other team lay it up, because don't forget, the score they put on you does not matter. I'm basically letting you walk in to lay it up so I can get the ball back. It's the Phoenix Suns or like, hey, take a quick two. We're going to come back and then if we're in the bonus, I'm going to foul you to stop the clock. And that's kind of started to happen. You could see he's like, did it a couple of times and then he backed off it because I think he thought this isn't good for the game. That's what this is going to bring. And it's going to happen eventually for this. If this continues to be a thing every season, if I'm a head coach, I'll do it. I've got no gripes. I'll win the money for our club. We can use that on whatever we want to use it on. It's great for our club, great for our players. We win some cash. But if I'm up 25 with 3 or 4 minutes left, I'm just going to foul you purposely. I'm going to let you have layups. That's not good for the game. That is not good for the crowd. It's not good for the ethics of the game. And I think it accidentally reared its head. I hope league officers noticed it because I did. And I'm a guy that notices little things in coaching. I was like, this is a legitimate thing that you don't want. I don't think you want that around your game.
And I think it probably was exacerbated for a team like Cairns that, well out of
100%.
playoff contention. This is all they're really playing for at this point. If you get in situations where these 10th, 9th place teams have an opportunity to at least take something away, like you said, you're not going to have any gripes, calling timeouts, fouling early, like just trying to get points on the board. So I don't know. I think moving forward, it probably needs to be reevaluated in some degree or scrapped altogether.
It's going to happen. Like there'll be nothing worse than a fan being at a game and you're like, this was in Brisbane. Your team's down 20 and then the other team's fouling on purpose. Or even if you're at home, we're up 20, fans are about to have a good win, and then the last 4 minutes goes for 20 minutes. When you're up 20, you're like, what's going on? It does not look good, and it's going to happen. I promise you, if this competition remains in play for the next decade, there will be a team that does that. I guarantee you, because like you said, if you're out of the playoff race and you're like, we can salvage something, get 50K, the guys split it up, a couple of K each here, coaches, great. All right, well, it's actually a good moment in our season considering how poorly we've played. It's going to happen. And for people that know the game and know basketball, that is not a good thing for fans. It's not a good thing for TV. It's not a good thing around the world. When you're looking at this, you're like, what the hell's going on? Why are they fouling up 20? Like it doesn't make sense.
Do you think it could potentially snowball as well with games left to play in the shootout? If you're a team up 20, third, fourth quarter, and you can see that you guys can beat Cairns, does it then become a snowball effect where you have multiple games now all of a sudden? Last 4 minutes, teams fouling.
It could be, yeah.
Stuff.
I mean, look, if you're a playoff team, the risk you have doing that is guys can get hurt. A lot can happen.
Of course.
But if you're, Brisbane now that's 7th or 8th, then you can be, yeah, of course. Like I would, and now you kind of noticed if you weren't paying attention to it and you watch that game, you're like, huh. If you're a coach, you watch all those kind of things and you're like, analytically they did this. That's kind of cool. In the summer shootout, that's what you do. You try to like literally get the ball back as quickly as possible. How do you do that? Here's a layup. Take it, 24-second shot clock, have a layup. We get the ball back in 4 seconds. Cool. We're going back to score to run that score up because it doesn't really affect the win-loss because it's now you can only really do that if you've got a nice little buffer in the last 3 minutes of a game. If it's a close game, it's a bit harder to do.
Yeah.
But even if it is a close game and you're a team that's out of the playoff hunt, you might still do it. You might want it to go to overtime. There was a game, I think in FIBA, where a team had to win by 9. Did you see this highlight? I think the team had to win by 9 to get through to the next round, and they were up by 1, and a guy had a free throw, and the team missed, and the other guy tried to tip it in on purpose, but he fucked it up. He missed the tip in. So the opposite team tried to tip it in to tie the game to go to overtime to give them another chance to then win by 9. You know, that's actually happened. So these are the kind of shenanigans you don't want in the game. So just an interesting note there. There is 3 games left in the round: Illawarra, Brisbane, Southeast Melbourne, Sydney, and Perth, Melbourne. These games have massive ramifications on the ladder, which, you know, those of you that follow the NBL, go to the NBL website. The ladder predictor is there. You can actually put in who you think is going to win and play around with that, which is a nightmare. It just fries your brain because you go back and change certain things to see who can fit in. Adelaide is still in the hunt. I am picking that they will take 6 off of Tasmania. Tasmania's got a much tougher run home than Adelaide. Adelaide's got 3 tough games out of their 5, I think it is. They should win one of those 3 tough ones. I think 3 wins is going to get them in. And Tasmania, I think Magnay back this weekend, but they've got a pretty rough run with injuries, so that could happen. But Southeast Melbourne, Sydney will have huge ramifications on moving them around. Perth, Melbourne, the same thing. So you know, a lot going on in the NBL. You got, you know, basically Southeast Melbourne 14-10, Melbourne 15-10, Sydney 15-10. Sydney are 3rd right now on 1 percentage point over Melbourne. Southeast Melbourne are a game behind. They've got a game in hand, so they win their next game against Sydney. Sydney drops all the way down to 5th. Southeast Melbourne goes to 3rd. Melbourne and Perth, same thing. Perth's 15-9. Melbourne's 15-10. They'll flip flop. You know, it's great. This point of the season, having the stuff so tight, I think, is really good for the game. Keeps teams competitive. Can put a line through Cairns, New Zealand, and Brisbane. Brisbane mathematically is still there. Percentage isn't very good. They basically need to win out and could still miss out if they win out. They could be 15-14 and still potentially miss out. But pretty wild, you know, how tight it is at this point of the season.
100%. And even teams that, like, I didn't think Adelaide would be able to salvage just because of the kind of horror run they had there for 4 or 5 games. But the fact that they're still now in the hunt with a couple big wins, I didn't expect. Obviously, Tassie just so unlucky with the injuries, but didn't expect the slide as bad as it's been. But obviously, trying to bring DPs in and playing guys that haven't been in the rotation, like, it's hard to win games. So I'm excited, and I think everyone's hunting for those top 2 spots because they're so important. You don't want to be playing these play-in teams, especially like a team like Adelaide.
I don't want to play Adelaide. Like I'm on record. Like, I hope they don't make it because I'm not being a hater on Adelaide. That's a compliment.
Yeah,
I think they're they got the most talented 6. Their first 6 or 7 is the most talented in the league, in my opinion, on a roster. Right? I think their bench. Even Kadhi's a great bench player for him, leader. He's not in their 7, but they're 6 with Martin. Like, he's tough. Like, they got, you know, really good players that are all very, very well paid and very credentialed. You don't want to see them in a play-in. You know, they're one of those teams that, like I said from the start, a small bit of adversity will affect them. But they're high risk, high reward. They've had the adversity that's all gone up and down, but I feel like they're steadying a little bit. But even if you get them in 6th or 5-6, like, and they win that, and they get more confidence, and it's like build up like the Hulk. They're really hulkish, right? And then all of a sudden you're in a final series and you're the 1 seed and you're playing. They came from the 5-6 and worked their way up to the 4 seed. If you're Illawarra, who they've beaten 3 times this season, you're like, oh my god.
Yeah.
So super interesting, but yeah, that's what you'll have to see in the NBL season. And on a somber note, just to finish, Vale Rick Longley, the father of Luke Longley, passed away peacefully. In the last couple of days. He played 8 games for the Wildcats in their debut season in 1982, coming out of retirement at 40 to help the new club. He averaged 4.5 points and 3.9 rebounds per game, as well as representing Australia on a number of occasions back in the day. So always a sad note when we have a NBL, you know, someone involved in the NBL legend, basketball legend in Australia, pass away. And then obviously, you know, the Sydney Kings, my friendship with Luke, you know, it's a sad day for him, but a lot of reminiscing for Luke, and we wish the Longley family all the best. And then also Darryl Pearce, NBL legend, sharpshooter, also passing away. We wish all the best to him and his family, and an NBL legend, North Melbourne Giants, Adelaide 36ers.
Yeah, Jersey retired for the 36ers.
But left the Adelaide 36ers controversially, I think, to the North Melbourne Giants, I think, for a season. Was
okay.
I'm pretty sure.
I'm not 100% sure.
And they were rivals, I believe, which was interesting. But Adelaide welcomed him back as a legend. I think he, you know, has been a big part of the club. I think I heard DJ say, like, he often calls some of their players and has a chat with them about how they're playing and whatnot. So the club still means a lot to him, and or did mean a lot to him. So it's a very sad day, not only for the family of Daryl Pierce, but I think the NBL community and Adelaide. So we send our condolences to those two fellas' families and hope everyone is okay. But remember that, you know, time is not much in what we have in life. So, you know, got to enjoy everyone while they're around, and especially in the basketball community in Australia, it's a very tight-knit community, and even people you don't know, someone knows someone that knows someone and have stories, and they're very important that we celebrate, you know, people's lives. So somber note to finish, but all the best. We'll see everyone next week for another episode of Road Bugs.